The auction hall was filled with strange lights and whispers. Every seat was taken by aliens of different shapes and colors, all waiting for the next rare being to be brought on stage. Among them sat Leora, a young and wealthy alien woman with emerald green skin, glowing red hair, and eyes that shimmered like gold under the spotlights. She had no intention of buying anything serious today. She was here only to amuse herself. That was until they brought out the human. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and unlike any creature Leora had ever seen. His eyes scanned the room with calm defiance, and his wrists were bound with metal cuffs. The auctioneer announced him as a rare male from the forbidden system of Sol, and the crowd gasped. No one dared to bid, for owning a human was illegal in most of the galaxy. But Leora's lips curved into a smile. Without hesitation, she placed the opening bid. The room went silent. The auctioneer's gavel came down fast, almost too eager to finish the transaction. Leora had just bought a human. She did not care about the law. She did not care about the risk. She wanted to see what made humans so feared and so valuable. The man was brought to her, his gaze steady and unbroken. She met his eyes and felt a shiver run down her spine. She took him back to her estate on the ocean world of Varelia. The house was carved into a cliffside, with glass walls opening to endless seas. Servants kept their distance, curious but cautious about the strange man now walking among them. Leora told him her name, expecting him to answer in return. He simply sighed, "Daniel," and kept looking out toward the horizon. It was the first time she felt unsure of what to say next. Days passed, and Leora found herself drawn to his quiet strength. Daniel spoke little, but when he did, every word felt like it carried weight. He moved through her home like he had already mapped it in his mind. He never showed fear, not even when alien guards kept watch over him. Leora began to wonder if she had underestimated what she had brought into her life. One evening, she noticed him staring at the stars from the balcony. "You miss your home," she said. Daniel didn't look at her. "Home is gone," he replied, "but my enemies aren't." His voice was low, steady, and filled with something she couldn't read. It was then she began to sense there was more to his story than she had imagined. The truth came faster than she expected. The next morning, ships appeared in Varelia's sky-dark, angular vessels that carried the mark of the Galactic Syndicate. Their message was clear and broadcast to the entire city: surrender the human or face destruction. Leora stood frozen as the warning echoed through the air. Daniel simply turned to her and said, "They found me." In that moment, Leora realized the danger was not just for him. The entire planet could burn because of the man she had purchased on a whim. Yet as the alarms began to blare in Syndicate, ships descended, she noticed something in Daniel's eyes. It was not fear. It was readiness. And for the first time, she wondered if the galaxy should be more afraid of him than he should be of it. Asterisk, the sirens of Varelia wailed across the city. Leora's estate, perched high above the ocean cliffs, shook as the Galactic Syndicate's ships descended. The sky turned from bright blue to a choking haze of black and red. Citizens scattered to underground shelters while defense forces scrambled into position. Leora's heart pounded as she stood at the balcony, watching the warships close in on her home. Inside, Daniel moved with the calm of someone who had faced this before. He walked to the weapons rack by the wall, ignoring the alien guards who shouted at him to stop. Leora's chief guard stepped forward, raising his weapon to block him. Daniel looked at the guard without speaking, and for a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, the guard lowered his weapon, as if sensing something deeper in the human's presence. Leora followed Daniel into the armory. She had collected weapons as rare pieces, never truly meant for battle. But Daniel handled them with the precision of an experienced soldier. He checked each one, discarding most, until he settled on a sleek plasma rifle, and a curved alien blade. His movements were quick, almost rehearsed. Liara asked him how he knew these weapons, but he gave no answer, only a glance that told her. She would not get the truth yet. Outside, the Syndicate's broadcast repeated their demand. "Surrender the human known as Daniel," the voice boomed over the city. "Failure to comply will result in immediate orbital strike." Liara's communications console flashed with incoming calls from the Planetary Council, urging her to give Daniel up. Every voice warned her the Syndicate would not bluff. But Liara felt an unexpected defiance rising within her. She had bought Daniel for her own reasons. She was not ready to give him away. Daniel seemed to read her thoughts. "If you keep me here, they will kill you too," he said. His tone was not cruel, only factual. But then he added something that made her hesitate. "If I leave now, they will still come after you. You know too much about me now." Liara tried to deny it, but deep down she knew he was right. The Syndicate did not leave witnesses. The first blast hit the shoreline defenses, sending a shockwave. Through the estate, the glass walls shuddered and cracked. Liara stumbled, but Daniel caught her by the arm, pulling her back to her feet. His grip was strong, steady, and unshaken. "We need to move," he said. She could not help but notice that while she was afraid, Daniel's eyes burned with something else, determination. They moved through the halls as the estate's guards engaged Syndicate troops at the main gates. Liara had seen her guards fight before, but now it was different. Daniel took command without asking, directing them to cover certain passages and set traps for the incoming squads. His voice carried authority that none of the trained soldiers questioned. In moments, the defense became organized and lethal. Liara realized Daniel was not just some rare prize from a forbidden system. He was a leader. Explosions tore through the upper levels of the estate, forcing them into the underground corridors. The air was thick with dust and the distant sounds of battle. Liara's mind raced with questions. Who was Daniel before she bought him? What had he done to make the Syndicate send warships for him? And why did he seem more prepared for this fight than anyone else on the planet? Each question made her realize she had stepped into something far larger than she had imagined. They reached a hidden exit carved into the cliffside. The ocean roared below, waves crashing against jagged rocks. A small combat skiff was docked there, swaying in the rising wind. Daniel stepped onto it first, scanning the horizon. "If we stay here, the Syndicate will break through. If we leave, they'll chase us across the galaxy," he said. His voice was steady, but there was a weight to his words that made Liara's chest tighten. Without giving herself time to doubt, Liara followed him into the skiff. The vessel's engines came alive with a low hum, and they shot forward into the open sea. Behind them, the Syndicate's ships grew larger in the sky, their weapons glowing with deadly light. Liara gripped the side of the skiff, her mind torn between fear and the strange sense that this human she had bought might be the only thing keeping her alive now. The skiff cut through the waves at full speed. The ocean spray hit Liara's face, but she barely noticed it. Her eyes stayed on the horizon, where the shadows of Syndicate craft moved like predators. Daniel sat at the controls, his focus unshakable. The small vessel swayed and jolted, but his hands never faltered. Liara could see the muscles in his arms tense each time he adjusted their path. A sudden streak of light passed overhead, followed by the deafening sound of plasma fire hitting the water. The blast created a wall of steam that engulfed the skiff. Liara coughed as the hot mist clung to her skin. Daniel did not slow down. He weaved through the chaos with precision, avoiding the incoming fire. She had seen trained pilots lose control under such pressure. Yet Daniel seemed to know every move the Syndicate would make before they made it. Behind them, 3 Syndicate interceptors closed in. Their sleek black hulls reflected the glow of their weapons as they locked onto the fleeing skiff. Daniel glanced over his shoulder once, then activated a series of hidden controls under the console. Leora's eyes widened as panels on the skiff's sides opened, revealing concealed launch tubes. Without warning, a volley of small guided charges shot toward the enemy craft. The first interceptor swerved too late, taking a direct hit that tore through its wing. Flames erupted, and it spun out of control before crashing into the sea. The second avoided the initial blast but was forced to break formation. The third pulled up, trying to gain a better angle. Daniel used the gap to steer them toward a cluster of jagged rock spires rising from the ocean. The Syndicate ships followed, unaware they were flying into a trap. The rocks formed a narrow channel, the space between them barely wide enough for the skiff. Daniel steered them through with incredible accuracy, the hull scraping against stone at one point. Leora's heart raced as she glanced back. One interceptor tried to follow and was instantly ripped apart by the razor-sharp edges of the spires. The remaining ship pulled away, unwilling to risk the same fate. For now, they had escaped immediate pursuit. When the open sea returned, Daniel slowed the skiff and switched off the external lights. The hum of the engine softened, leaving only the sound of waves hitting the hull. Leora sat across from him, still trying to catch her breath. "Who are you really?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but inside she was bracing for an answer. That could change everything. Daniel's eyes met hers, but he said nothing. Instead, he looked toward the stars above, as if the truth was written somewhere in the sky. The silence stretched until Leora finally turned away. She told herself it did not matter who Daniel was. What mattered was that the Syndicate wanted him gone, and she had chosen to keep him alive. That choice had already cost lives, and she could not pretend otherwise. Yet a strange part of her was glad she had made it. For reasons she could not explain, Daniel felt less like a dangerous stranger and more like an anchor in the storm. Their journey took them far from the coast, into waters few dared to cross. Leora knew these seas were home to ancient creatures and violent tempests. The Syndicate ships would hesitate to follow, but the ocean itself could kill them just as easily. Daniel seemed unbothered by the risk. He navigated using landmarks she did not recognize, guiding them with the confidence of someone who had studied these waters long before setting foot on this world. By nightfall, a dark silhouette appeared on the horizon. At first, Leora thought it was an island, but as they drew closer, she saw the smooth lines of metal beneath the moss and coral. It was a massive structure, half submerged, its towers reaching toward the clouds. Daniel steered directly toward it without a word. The skiff glided into a hidden dock, and the shadows of the ancient place swallowed them whole. Leora stepped onto the platform, her boots echoing in the vast empty chamber. The air smelled of salt and rust. Strange lights flickered along the walls, faint but still alive after what looked like centuries of abandonment. Daniel moved ahead, his posture shifting into something sharper, more alert. He was not exploring. He was returning. Leora realized with a chill that wherever they were, Daniel had been here before. The massive structure loomed around them, its walls covered in strange carvings and markings that shimmered faintly under the dim light. Leora ran her fingers across the symbols, feeling a faint hum beneath the surface. She had never seen technology like this before, and she had traveled across more than a dozen star systems. Daniel moved ahead, each step deliberate, as if he knew exactly where to go. The chamber opened into a vast hall with high ceilings supported by massive steel arches. Pools of still water reflected the faint glow of alien lights embedded in the walls. Leora's voice echoed when she asked, "What is this place?" Daniel did not slow down. "A sanctuary," he replied. His tone carried a weight that made her hesitate to ask more questions. It felt as though they had stepped into something sacred. Daniel led her to a sealed doorway at the far end of the hall. He pressed his hand against a panel, and to Leora's shock, it lit up instantly. The door split open with a slow hiss, revealing a narrow corridor lined with storage crates and ancient weapon racks. Dust clung to everything, yet the weapons seemed untouched by time. Daniel's eyes scanned the rows with the familiarity of someone who had been here many times before. Leora trailed behind him, her mind racing. This place was hidden, ancient, and clearly dangerous in the wrong hands. If the Syndicate knew about it, they would come for more than just Daniel. They would strip it bare and destroy anything they could not take. She began to understand that Daniel was not only running from the Syndicate for himself, he was keeping them away from something far more valuable. In the center of the corridor, Daniel stopped at a sealed container and knelt down. He worked the locking mechanism with quick precision, and the lid popped open to reveal a sleek black suit of armor. Its surface was etched with the same glowing symbols that covered the walls. Leora's breath caught as Daniel touched the armor with a reverence she had not seen in him before. "This belonged to me," he said quietly. He began to put on the armor piece by piece, the plates fitting perfectly, as if they had been waiting for him. Leora noticed that each section lit up faintly when locked into place, the symbols pulsing with life. By the time he fastened the chest plate, Daniel looked less like a man and more like a warrior from an ancient legend. There was no hesitation in his movements. He was preparing for something he had known would come, the sound of distant engines reached them, muffled by the walls but growing louder. Leora's stomach tightened. "They found us," she said. Daniel simply nodded. "They were always going to." His voice was calm, almost resigned, yet there was a spark of something else in his eyes' resolve. He reached for a weapon from the rack, a long rifle with a blade attachment, and handed Leora a smaller sidearm without asking if she could use it. They moved quickly back toward the main chamber, the faint glow of the walls guiding their path. Leora could already hear the Syndicate soldiers moving inside the structure, their boots clanging against the metal floor. The air was tense and heavy, filled with the knowledge that this battle would decide more than just their survival. Daniel's pace never slowed. Every step was measured, controlled, as if the chaos ahead was simply part of a plan he had carried in his mind for years. The first Syndicate soldiers appeared at the far end of the hall, their weapons raised. Daniel dropped to one knee and fired. With deadly precision, each shot striking clean and true. Leora stayed behind cover, her heart pounding as she returned fire when she could. Sparks flew as plasma bolts hit the steel walls, filling the chamber with flashes of light and bursts of smoke. The sound was deafening, but Daniel's voice cut through it with commands that kept her moving. When the last soldier in the first wave fell, Daniel turned to Leora. "They won't stop until they have me," he said. "But they can't have what's here." His voice was hard, final, as if he had already decided how this would end. Leora met his gaze and saw no fear, only determination. In that moment, she understood that whatever Daniel truly was, he was not running anymore. He was preparing to face the galaxy head-on. The second wave came faster and harder. Syndicate troops poured into the hall in tight formation, their armor gleaming under the flicker of ancient lights. Daniel moved like a shadow among them, each shot precise, each strike of his blade fatal. Leora stayed close to the cover of the steel arches, firing when she saw an opening. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of scorched metal. Blasts tore into the walls, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Leora felt her ears ring from the constant barrage. Through it all, Daniel did not hesitate. His voice cut through the chaos with sharp commands, directing her and the guards who had followed them from the estate. It was clear he had been in battles far worse than this. His calm presence made her push past her fear. One soldier broke through the crossfire and charged toward Leora. She raised her sidearm and fired twice, the plasma bolt striking him squarely in the chest. The soldier collapsed, his weapon clattering against the floor. For a moment, Leora froze, the reality of taking a life sinking in. Then Daniel's voice pulled her back. "Move," he ordered, and she obeyed without question. The syndicate pressed forward, forcing Daniel to retreat deeper into the hall. He guided them toward the side passages, using the narrow corridors to limit how many enemies could attack at once. The ancient walls reverberated with each shot, and bits of metal and dust rained from above. Leora followed him through the twisting paths, her mind racing with the thought that they might not make it out. They reached another chamber, this one, filled with massive pillars that rose into the shadows above. Daniel motioned for everyone to take positions behind the pillars. When the syndicate soldiers entered, they were met with a sudden storm of fire from all sides. The ambush turned the battle in their favor, forcing the enemy to retreat back toward the main entrance. Daniel seized the moment and pushed forward, cutting down the stragglers. Silence followed, but it was the kind of silence that carried warning. Leora could feel the tension in the air, like the calm before a greater storm. Daniel lowered his rifle and scanned the shadows. "They're regrouping," he said. His voice was steady, but there was no mistaking the weight behind it. Leora realized they were not just fighting to survive this attack. They were fighting to keep this place hidden. The floor trembled under a heavier impact. Leora's eyes went wide as the massive front gates of the structure buckled under a powerful blast. From the smoke emerged figures far larger than the syndicate soldiers they had faced so far. These were armored enforcers, built for heavy combat, their weapons integrated into their armor. Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened as he stepped forward to meet them. The first enforcer fired a high-powered round that exploded against the far wall, sending shards of metal flying. Daniel darted between the pillars, using the terrain to stay out of the line of fire. He leapt onto one of the enforcers, driving his blade into a weak point between the plates of armor. The machine-like warrior staggered, sparks pouring from the wound. Before collapsing in a heap, Leora fired at another enforcer, but her shots bounced harmlessly off its armor. Daniel moved in, striking the same vulnerable joints he had with the first. His blade cut deep, and the enforcer crumbled. But the third came at him with crushing force, swinging a massive arm that knocked him into one of the pillars. Leora's heart stopped for a moment, but Daniel rose again, his armor glowing brighter with each movement. The remaining enforcers fell one by one, but not without cost. The ancient hall was littered with debris, scorch marks, and the fallen. Leora's legs trembled as she lowered her weapon. The sound of syndicate ships moving overhead told her the fight was not finished. She looked at Daniel, who stood among the wreckage like a figure out of an old war story. Whatever he truly was, he was no ordinary man. And for the first time, she began to fear what the galaxy might do to stop him. The echoes of battle still lingered in the ancient hall. Smoke curled upward from broken weapons, and the glow of the wall symbols flickered like a fading heartbeat. Leora's ears rang from the fight, but her focus stayed on Daniel. He moved with a steady pace, checking each fallen enemy as if making sure none would rise again. His armor was scorched, but his steps were firm. Outside, the rumble of engines grew louder. The syndicate was bringing in heavier support. Daniel walked to a central platform in the chamber and placed his hand on a glowing panel. The floor beneath them began to shift, revealing a deep chamber lit with cold blue light. Massive war machines and advanced weaponry stood in perfect rows, untouched by time. Leora's breath caught as she realized this was more than a sanctuary. It was an arsenal. Daniel moved among the machines with purpose, activating systems and pulling out key components. "We can't let the syndicate get any of this," he said. His tone left no room for argument. Leora followed him, taking in the scale of what she was seeing. Some of these machines were larger than buildings, their surfaces covered in the same strange markings as Daniel's armor. She began to understand why the syndicate feared him so much. Leora's communicator buzzed with a message from the Planetary Council. They demanded she hand Daniel over immediately, warning that the syndicate would level the city if she refused. Her hands tightened around the device. She had the power to end this by giving Daniel up, but the thought made her stomach turn. She looked at him and knew she could not do it. If the Syndicate won here, they would not stop with him. The floor shook again as explosions echoed from above. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the lights in the chamber dimmed. Daniel finished loading several devices into a transport crate and locked it shut. He handed Leora a small control module. "If I fall, destroy everything in this place," he said. The weight of the device in her hands felt heavier than any weapon. She realized he was trusting her with the power to erase an entire arsenal. Heavy. Footsteps thundered from the entrance as Syndicate shock troops entered, their armor painted with black and red insignias. They carried massive weapons, and their formation was flawless. Daniel stepped forward to meet them, his armor glowing brighter with each movement. The first shot rang out, and the battle erupted again. The sound was deafening, plasma bolts striking. The walls and machines sending showers of sparks into the air. Daniel moved like a storm, weaving between cover and enemies with precision. His strikes were calculated, every shot ending an opponent's advance. Leora found herself firing alongside him without hesitation. The shock troops were stronger than the soldiers before, but Daniel seemed to know their weaknesses. He aimed for exposed joints, weapon ports, and helmet seams, cutting through their numbers faster than she thought possible. One shock trooper broke through the line and charged toward Leora. She fired, but the shot glanced off his armor. Before he could reach her, Daniel intercepted, slamming his blade into the trooper's side. The enemy fell with a crash that shook the floor. Daniel gave her a quick nod before turning back to the fight. In that moment, she felt an odd mix of relief and fear, relief that he was there, and fear of what he could do when cornered. The Syndicate troops began to fall back, but not before tossing in small spherical devices that rolled across the floor. Daniel's eyes widened. "Get down," he shouted. The grenades detonated with blinding light and concussive force, throwing both of them to the ground. Leora's vision blurred as her ears filled with a high-pitched ring. She struggled to rise, but Daniel was already back on his feet, pulling her behind cover. When the light faded, the enemy was gone, retreating into the corridors. Daniel knew they would be back, and next time, they would bring even greater force. Leora steadied herself, still clutching the control module he had given her. The battle was not over, but she could see the path it was taking. The Syndicate would not stop until either Daniel was dead or the galaxy itself was burning around him. The hall smelled of scorched metal and ozone. Leora leaned against a steel pillar, catching her breath while Daniel checked the remaining ammunition. The glow from his armor was dimmer now, but his eyes burned with focus. She could tell he was calculating the next move, reading the enemy before they even appeared. It was like watching someone play a game they had mastered long ago. The comms unit on her wrist buzzed again, this time with a direct transmission from the Syndicate commander. The voice was deep and steady, carrying an edge of satisfaction. "Give us the human, and we will leave your planet in peace." Leora looked at Daniel, expecting him to speak, but he only gave a faint shake of his head. She knew then that the offer was a lie. The Syndicate would never keep their word. Daniel moved to the control panel near the chamber's main entrance. With a few swift commands, heavy blast doors began to descend, sealing most of the access points. "This will slow them down," he said. The metal doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the hall. Leora realized he was preparing for a last stand, though he never said it aloud. Above them, the roar of engines drew closer. The structure vibrated under the force of heavy dropships landing nearby. Daniel loaded a fresh power cell into his rifle and handed Leora another magazine for her sidearm. "Stay close," he told her. His voice was firm, but there was a strange calm in it, as if the chaos outside could not touch him. She felt the urge to ask why, but the words caught in her throat. The first breach came from the northern corridor. Syndicate drones flooded in. Small but fast, their energy cannons firing without pause. Daniel dropped the first wave before they could spread out. Leora hit two with precise shots, her training over the last hours sharpened by sheer survival instinct. The rest of the guards held their ground, firing in controlled bursts that kept the drones from overwhelming them. When the last drone fell, a deeper sound replaced the high whine of their engines, a slow mechanical march. From the shadows emerged a massive exosuit, its pilot encased in reinforced armor that gleamed with Syndicate insignias. The suit's cannon powered up, casting a red glow across the chamber. Leora's pulse quickened, but Daniel stepped forward without hesitation. As though he had faced worse before, the cannon fired, sending a blast that ripped through one of the side pillars. Shards of metal rained down, forcing Leora to duck. Daniel rolled aside and fired at the suit's joints, each shot sparking against the armor. The pilot adjusted, swinging the massive arm toward him. Daniel darted in close, driving his blade into a seam between plates. The exosuit shuddered, its cannon sputtering before going dark, but the victory was short-lived. More Syndicate troops stormed in from the western corridor, their weapons cutting through the haze. Daniel signaled the guards to form a defensive line while he moved to the side, flanking the attackers. His movements were fluid, almost inhumanly precise. Each shot found its mark, and each strike with his blade ended with an enemy on the floor. Leora followed his lead, covering his back whenever she could. The enemy numbers thinned, but they did not stop. It was clear they were testing the defenses, wearing them down before the final push. Leora felt the weight of the control module still in her pocket, the one Daniel had given her to destroy the arsenal if needed. She wondered if he expected her to use it before this battle was over. Part of her feared she might have to. When the last soldier in the current wave fell, the hall went silent again. Daniel walked to the center and looked toward the blast doors. "The next one will be the last," he said. His voice was low but steady, carrying the certainty of someone who had seen the end of battles before. Leora tightened her grip on her weapon, knowing that whatever came next would decide everything, not just for them, but for the entire planet. The blast doors shook under the impact of something massive. The sound was like thunder rolling through the ancient structure. Leora stood with her back to one of the pillars, gripping her weapon until her knuckles turned pale. Daniel stood in the open, his armor's glow steady, his rifle ready. He did not look afraid. He looked like a man who had been waiting for this moment. The metal tore apart as a towering war mech stepped into the hall. It was unlike anything Leora had seen before, its armored frame bristling with weapons. The Syndicate's insignia glowed on its chest, pulsing like a heartbeat. Behind it, squads of soldiers poured in, fanning out across the chamber. The final assault had begun, and there was no retreat now. Daniel moved first, firing a rapid burst at the mech's optical sensors. Sparks flew, but the machine kept advancing, its cannons charging with deadly energy. The first blast missed him by inches, scorching the floor. He closed the distance with impossible speed, sliding under its arm and driving his blade into a joint at the knee. The mech staggered, but its sheer size kept it standing. The soldiers opened fire, forcing Leora and the guards to scatter for cover. Plasma bolts lit the air, striking the ancient walls and machines. Leora aimed carefully, taking down two enemies who had pushed too close. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She was no longer the woman who had bought Daniel for amusement. She was fighting for her life and for him. Daniel scaled the side of the mech, using its armor as handholds. The machine tried to shake him off, swinging its arm violently. He reached the top and ripped open a panel, exposing the glowing core. Within, with one final strike, he drove his blade into it. The mech shuddered, its weapons flickering before it collapsed in a cloud of smoke and fire. The soldiers froze for a heartbeat, Stunned by the sight, that heartbeat was all Daniel needed. He charged into their ranks, moving like a force of nature. His strikes were swift, each one dropping an enemy before they could react. Leora and the guards pressed forward, cutting down the remaining troops. The hall filled with the sound of battle cries, weapons fire, and the clang of armor hitting the ground. The Syndicate's formation broke under the assault. When the last soldier fell, the chamber went silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. Smoke drifted lazily through the air. Leora lowered her weapon, her eyes fixed on Daniel. His armor was scorched and dented, but he stood tall, his blade still in his hand. In that silence, she understood why the galaxy feared him. He was not simply a fighter. He was the kind of man wars were built around. The comms unit on the fallen commander's belt crackled to life. A voice, cold and sharp, spoke through it. "This is not over. We will burn every world you hide on." Daniel picked it up and crushed it in his hand. He turned to Leora, his expression unreadable. "They'll come again," he said. "And when they do, it won't just be for me." She knew he was right. The Syndicate would not forgive what had happened here. Daniel walked back to the central platform and placed his hand on the control panel. The glowing symbols on the walls pulsed brighter, and a low hum filled the chamber. "I can't leave this arsenal here," he said. Leora pulled the control module from her pocket, realizing what he meant. He was giving her the choice to destroy everything or to risk the Syndicate claiming it. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her. She stepped forward and placed her hand on his. "We end it now," she said. Together, they activated the sequence. The walls lit up like a rising sun, and the ancient machines began to power down permanently. Outside, Syndicate ships pulled away, their scans showing nothing left to claim. As the last light faded, Leora knew she had not just bought a human. She had found someone worth defying the galaxy for.